Have you ever felt it? That primal instinct that raises the hairs on your arms and makes the back of your neck prickle? That feeling that you are not alone, even when you're certain you are. Most of us dismiss it as paranoia, a trick of the mind. But what if it isn't? What if it's a warning? Tonight, we are sharing 3 chillingly true stories about people who ignored that feeling at first, only to discover the horrifying reality. They were being watched. These aren't fictional tales, they are raw, real accounts from individuals who found themselves the center of a stranger's unnerving attention. So, check your locks, pull your shades, and try to convince yourself that the creak you just heard was only the house settling. Because after these stories, you'll question every shadow. Our first story begins with something many of us take for granted: the privacy of our own home. For one young woman, the line between sanctuary and stage was about to be terrifyingly blurred, not by a ghost or a monster, but by something far more real. Story 1. The Man in the Alley. Sarah had just moved into her first apartment, a second-floor walk-up in a bustling city neighborhood. She loved the energy, the sounds of life around her. But her apartment had one peculiar feature. Her bedroom window looked directly out into a narrow, dimly lit alleyway that separated her building from the one next door. For the first few weeks, she paid it no mind. It was just an alley. Then, one night, while getting ready for bed, she had that unmistakable feeling, the sensation of being watched. She glanced at her window, but saw nothing but the dark brick wall of the opposite building. She shrugged it off. A few nights later, it happened again. This time, as she turned on her bedroom light, she caught a flicker of movement in the alley window across from hers. A curtain seemed to twitch, just for a second. Again, she dismissed it. An open window, a draft. There was always a rational explanation. The feeling, however, became a nightly occurrence. It was a heavy, persistent sense of being observed that made her skin crawl. She started changing her clothes in the bathroom and keeping her blinds mostly closed, which she hated because it blocked the natural light. She felt like a prisoner in her own room. The true horror began about a month after she moved in. She was working a late shift and didn't get home until after 2 a.m. As she walked into her bedroom and flicked on the light, she didn't just feel it, she saw it. In the window of the supposedly empty apartment across the alley, a light was on. And in that window, for just a moment, she saw the silhouette of a person before the light was abruptly extinguished. Her heart pounded in her chest. The next day, she contacted her landlord and asked who lived in the apartment across the alley. The landlord checked his records and gave her a chilling response. The apartment was supposed to be vacant. It had been for months, pending renovations. He promised to send someone to check the locks. That night, the feeling of being watched was more intense than ever. Sarah, terrified, decided to test a theory. She sat in her darkened living room where she could see her own bedroom window. She waited. Hours passed. Just as she was about to give up, a light flickered on in the vacant apartment's window. A figure stepped into view. It was a man, and he was raising a pair of binoculars to his eyes, pointing them directly at her bedroom. Sarah didn't scream. She was frozen in a state of pure terror. She fumbled for her phone and called the police, whispering what she was seeing. The dispatcher told her officers were on their way and to stay on the line and out of sight. While she waited, the man in the window just stood there, watching her empty, illuminated room. As the distant wail of sirens grew closer, the man lowered his binoculars, looked directly towards her living room window as if he knew she was there, and then simply stepped back into the darkness of the vacant apartment. When the police arrived, they found the door to the other apartment forced open. Inside, it was dusty and empty, except for one thing. In the back bedroom, facing Sarah's window, was a single metal folding chair and a pile of cigarette butts on the floor. They also found a small, handwritten note on the floor that simply said, "I see you." The man was never caught. They found no fingerprints, no identification. Sarah broke her lease and moved out the following week. She never lived in an apartment with a window facing an alley again, a constant, nagging reminder of the weeks she spent as the unwilling star of a stranger's terrifying show. Sarah's experience is a terrifying example of physical surveillance, of someone invading your space from a distance. But in our modern world, the eyes watching us aren't always human. Sometimes they are digital. Our next story shows how the technology we invite into our homes can be turned against us, creating one of the most violating true horror stories imaginable. Story 2. The Digital Ghost. For Liam, a college student living hundreds of miles from home, his laptop was his lifeline. It was his connection to friends, family, and his classes. It was also, he would soon discover, a window for someone else to peer into his life. It started with small, easily dismissed glitches. His webcam indicator light would flash on for a second, then off, even when he wasn't using it. He'd hear a faint click through his speakers when no audio was playing. He ran virus scans, updated his software, and assumed it was just his old laptop showing its age. Then, things escalated. He was on a video call with his parents when his screen suddenly went black. A moment later, a message appeared in the chat window, not from his parents, but from an unknown user. It said, "Nice shirt, Liam." He was wearing a new shirt he hadn't shown anyone yet. He ended the call immediately, his blood running cold. The harassment became more direct. Files would be moved on his desktop. His mouse cursor would drift across the screen on its own. One evening, while studying, his music player opened and began playing a single, distorted song on repeat, a creepy, off-key lullaby. Liam felt a growing sense of dread. He wasn't just being hacked, he was being toyed with. The feeling of being watched was no longer a feeling, it was a certainty. He took his laptop to the campus IT department. They ran diagnostics and found a sophisticated piece of spyware, a remote access Trojan, or rat, buried deep in his system. It gave the hacker complete control of his computer, including his webcam and microphone. The IT specialist told him it was one of the most invasive pieces of malware he'd ever seen, and that it had likely been on the machine for months. They wiped his computer completely, but the psychological damage was done. Liam felt violated. The hacker had seen him in his most private moments, studying, eating, sleeping. They had listened to his private conversations. The worst part was not knowing who it was or why they had chosen him. The climax came a week after his computer was cleaned. He received an email from an anonymous address. The subject line was, "I miss watching you." Attached was a folder of images. With trembling hands, he opened it. Inside were dozens of photos of him, all taken from the perspective of his own webcam. Pictures of him sleeping, of him distressed and running virus scans, and one particularly chilling photo of him looking directly at the camera with a worried expression, taken the very day the haunting began. The police were involved, but the digital ghost was, true to its name, impossible to trace. The experience left Liam with a deep-seated paranoia about technology. He now keeps a piece of tape over his laptop camera and is wary of every unexpected pop-up and glitch. He learned the hard way that in today's world, the person watching you might not be outside your window, but sitting right in front of you, hidden behind the screen. A stranger across the alley, a ghost in the machine. Both are terrifying. But what happens when the person watching you isn't a stranger at all? What if it's someone you see every day, someone you trust? Our final, and perhaps most disturbing story, is about the monster next door, and the horrifying discovery that the safest place you know is the one you should have feared the most. Story 3. The Neighbor's Notebook. The Thompson family, Mark, Jenny, and their 2 young children, lived in a quiet, idyllic suburban neighborhood. Their next-door neighbor was an elderly man named Mr. Abernathy. He had lived in his house for over 40 years, was always friendly, and would often leave cookies on their porch during the holidays. To them, he was a sweet, harmless old man. Over time, however, the Thompsons started noticing odd things. Mr. Abernathy seemed to know things about their schedule that he shouldn't. He'd comment on a new piece of furniture Jenny had bought, even though he had never been inside their house. He once asked Mark how his business trip to a specific city went, a trip Mark had only discussed with Jenny inside their own home. They dismissed it as small-town gossip, or perhaps him overhearing things in the yard. But a subtle, unsettling feeling began to grow. Jenny started feeling an unshakable sense of being watched when she was in her backyard, even when Mr. Abernathy's curtains were drawn. The horrifying truth was revealed by accident. One winter afternoon, a pipe burst in Mr. Abernathy's house while he was out. Water was pouring from his front door. Mark, being a good neighbor, used a spare key Mr. Abernathy had given him for emergencies to enter the house and turn off the water main in the basement. The basement was cluttered and musty, filled with decades of forgotten junk. But as Mark's eyes adjusted to the dim light, he saw something that made him freeze. In the far corner, behind a stack of old boxes, was a small, meticulously organized workspace. There was a desk, a chair, and several pairs of high-powered binoculars. But that wasn't the scary part. Pinned to a large corkboard were photographs of the Thompson family. Pictures of them in their yard, through their windows, playing with their kids. And on the desk lay a collection of spiral notebooks. Mark's hands shook as he opened the top one. It was a detailed log, a log of their lives. 7:15 a.m. Mark left for work, gray suit. 11:30 a.m. Jenny is on the phone in the kitchen. She seems upset. 4 p.m. the children are playing on the swing set. The daughter fell. Cried for 2 minutes. Every day, for years, was documented in excruciating detail. Conversations he thought were private were written down, arguments, moments of joy, all of it. He had been secretly documenting their entire lives, the cookies, the friendly waves. It was all a facade for a dark, invasive obsession. Mark backed out of the basement, his mind reeling. He called Jenny, told her to take the kids and go to her sister's house immediately, and then he called the police. When confronted, Mr. Abernathy admitted to everything. He told the authorities he was lonely and that watching the Thompsons was like having a family of his own. He saw nothing wrong with his actions. Due to his age and a lack of explicit threats, he was given a restraining order and mandated psychological evaluation. But the Thompsons could no longer live there. They sold their home at a loss, shattered by the knowledge that their trusted neighbor had been their most dedicated and terrifying stalker. The sanctity of their home was destroyed forever by the man next door. The feeling of being watched stems from one of our most basic survival instincts. These true horror stories are a chilling testament to why we should listen to that instinct. Whether it's a stranger, a hacker, or someone shockingly close to home, the violation of one's privacy is a unique and profound horror. It reminds us that sometimes the most terrifying monsters are real people. If you found these stories as unsettling as we did, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more disturbing true content. Your support helps us bring these important stories to light. Do you have a story of your own? Share it in the comments below. We read them all. Stay aware, stay safe, and always trust your gut.